The intercarpal joints, where is it? They're basically the joints between the carpal bones themselves, okay? Just trying to find it right here. There we go. So they're between the bones of the carpus, gliding joints. So the midcarpal joint, okay, this is the S-shaped joint found between the proximal and distal carpal rows, but the intercarpal is found between, let's say, scaphoid lunate, triquetrum and lunate, hamate and capitate, trapezoid and capitate, trapezium and capitate, and that's the intercarpal joint, okay? The midcarpal, as you've seen, between the proximal and distal rows of the carpal bones, and I've shown you right now the S-shaped joint. They're found between the proximal row and the distal row of the carpal bones. The Carpometacarpal joint of the thumb. Okay, we need pictures. The book did not do a good job in this one. So Carpometacarpal joints of, let's just do that. Okay, Carpometacarpal joints. And if you can see, when you say Carpometacarpal joint, it's between the distal row of the carpal bones, okay, and the metacarpals. From the name, Carpometacarpal joints. Right here, right here, right here, right here, right here. So maybe a better one. You have right there. So the Carpometacarpal joint of the thumb is between the trapezium, which is a carpal bone, which is closest to the thumb, and the metacarpal bone of the thumb, okay? And if you want to know where it's on my hand right here, it's this one. You see this joint right here? It's between the trapezium and the metacarpal bone of the thumb, okay? That's the carpometacarpal bone of the joint of the thumb, okay? Where is it? Yes, and you see trapezium and base of the first metacarpal bone. The type here is saddle synovial, and why saddle is because this joint specifically moves very different from the other ones, which are plain. This one right here allows for a wide variety of motions, and that's why it's saddle. So the carpometacarpal joint of the thumb is between the trapezium carpal bone and the metacarpal bone of the thumb itself, and that's a saddle joint. Okay, and look, movements allowed: flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, opposition. All of those joints allow it to become a saddle joint. Carpometacarpal joints of the medial four fingers, and that's between the distal carpal distal carpal row of the carpal bones, okay, and the metacarpal bones of the four last metacarpal bones of the hand. So you have metacarpal bone number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's between those metacarpals and the distal row of the carpal bones. And here they're plain joints; they only allow for gliding. You have to know exactly what every bone within the hand is made up of: the articular stuff, the articular bones, and what type of joint it is, okay? So now we know that the carpal bones contain intercarpal and midcarpal. These are plain joints. And now we're going to go to the thumb. Carpometacarpal joint of the thumb is a saddle joint between the trapezium and the first metacarpal bone of the thumb. Now we're going to go to the four metacarpal bones of the hand. So the carpometacarpal joints here is between the distal row of the carpal bones and the metacarpal bones 2 to 5, and these are plain. Okay, now we're done. Now we're going to move on. We're going to dive into the ligaments just in a bit, but next we have to discuss the interphalangeal joints. And the interphalangeal joints are all hinge joints. So Um, the interphalangeal joints are between are within the phalanges themselves, and all of them are hinge joints. Okay, and you have the proximal interphalangeal joint and the distal interphalangeal joints. Okay, proximal, distal, proximal, distal, proximal, distal, proximal, and then here you only have um, one interphalangeal joint in the thumb. Okay, don't confuse the metacarpal phalangeal joint of the thumb with the um, interphalangeal joint. Okay, metacarpal phalangeal joints here on my knuckles. Here, this is between the metacarpal bones and the phalangeal phalanges. Okay, so it's called the metacarpal phalangeal joints. Also here with the thumb, metacarpal phalangeal joint. Okay, and basically that's all of the joints present in the hands. I'm going to go over them quickly again. So intercarpal, what is it called? Yes, intercarpal joints between the carpal bones themselves individually. The midcarpal joint, the S shape between the proximal and distal row of the carpal bones. Now we're going to dive into the carpometacarpal joints of the thumb first, between the trapezium and the first metacarpal bone of the thumb. It's called the carpometacarpal joint of the thumb. It's a saddle joint, allows for so many movements. The carpometacarpal joints of the hand, when it comes to metacarpal bones number 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're all plain. And then we go to the metacarpophalangeal joints with the um, metacarpophalangeal joint of the thumb. And here, the metacarpophalangeal joint of the index, the middle, the third, and the pinky. Okay. Then we have the interphalangeal joints. In the thumb, it's only one, and that's why it's just called the thumb interphalangeal joint. But then here in the fingers, because we have the proximal, middle, and distal, but in the thumb we have the proximal and the distal. There's no middle, and that's why there's only one. Now here we have two interphalangeal joints because of the proximal, middle, and distal. Okay, and these are all hinge joints. Now, just know that the metacarpophalangeal joints of the index, middle, third, and pinky, they're all joined together by transverse ligaments. And that's why they're joined together and they're not separated. But the thumb one is separated from the index and it's not joined by a transverse ligament. And that's why those four are together and this one is just alone, because there's no transverse ligament that is joining them together.